Welcome to the Little Bit of Life podcast, where we talk about what we think but don't always say. Settle in, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's episode together. You're right where you need to be. Meet Rue and Crew Nutrition, natural, holistic healing for your dog, from GI balance, anticonvulsant, CBD for separation anxiety, to hydration and pre-cancer prevention. There is something for every dog, no matter the age or breed. Order now at rueandcrewnutrition.com and save the hassle, help the health, and extend the time of your beloved pup today. Because they're not just a dog, they're family. Hey everybody, welcome in a Little Bit of Life podcast right here with your host, Little. This is a topic, this is a case of all of our entire lives, actually. It's not even the case of the century, it's the case of our entire lives. I think all of us know exactly the case of O.J. Simpson, Nicole Brown. We know exactly where we were. Most of us were younger. We watched the Bronco chase like I did. I remember sitting there watching it with my family. But I think all of us have kind of had this intuition of we want to know more. There's got to be more that we don't know. There has to be more ins and outs of this case. And we have on Brian with us today. He was in that exact position and he was a deep diver, author, and that's exactly the case we're talking about today. Hey, Brian, it's good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
This is a case that really interested you. What made this so personal for you that you just took a lot of interest?
It's really a bizarre story, but I'm a school principal now. I do a small elementary school out here by Parker, Arizona. But I used to be a reporter and an editor, several newspapers for 20 years. And there's always that itch to go back and report and do writing and stuff like that. I was at home one day folding laundry in my bedroom, and I was casually watching the documentary about the OJ case, and a question popped in my head, and I figured I could get on my phone and get my quick answer, but I couldn't find the answer. And then so I went to work the next day and I started digging some more, and I still couldn't find my answer. And then I started trying to get my hands on court transcripts because I just had to know this answer. And I ended up getting it, but it was the search for this answer that led me down these other bizarre stories that most people are not aware of. And they're not conspiracy theories. Some are directly involved with the case, and some stories are indirectly involved. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, pretty fascinating.
Well, you wrote a book about it. I'm going to put it in the bio description. There's no excuses. You guys know I make it very easy and accessible. You guys just click, go right there and order it. But it's called OJ's Moon, Untold Stories from the Other Side. We're diving into it because there's a lot of names that come up in your book, and there's a lot of interwoven connections, which I think people don't really know about.
Yeah.
The general public isn't aware. So we're going to talk about Tom Lang. He's one that comes up pretty quickly from civil trial documents and everything. Give us a little bit of insight about what we do or don't know about Tom Lang.
Well, it's really even hard just to get past the point of there are two Tom Langs that are involved in the case. There's Detective Tom Lang, and he's got an E on the end of his name. And then there's a witness that never ended up taking the stand. And I explore the reasons as to why. But he was a very successful general contractor. He lived right down the street from Nicole. She lived at 875 Bundy. He lived at 975 Bundy. And he was on his way back from a weekend getaway in a little town called Tehachapi, California. It's a beautiful place in the mountains. And they were out there looking to buy property. They drove back to Orange County to pick up their daughter, Amy. And then they decided instead of staying there, they would just drive home to Brentwood that night because he had a lot of things to do that next morning. They got home about 9:45 p.m. and he said, "I'll walk the dog." They have this beautiful Rhodesian Ridgeback. I even have a picture of the dog in the book that I was able to get my hands on. Usually he walks the dog around the block. He goes up and he walks north on Bundy, then he turns west on Dorothy, then he goes to Gretna Green, and he walks south and he just goes around the block. He's done that many times over the years, and he knows it's about 3 minutes to get from his house to the corner of Dorothy and Bundy. And he is adamant that when he left the house with the dog, it was at exactly 10 o'clock. And that puts him at the corner of Dorothy and Bundy at 10:03 p.m. Now he was walking his dog without a leash, and he got close to the corner, and usually he'll just walk by. But if he sees some cars coming down Dorothy, coming south on Dorothy, he has the dog wait until they pass by, because if they turn on Dorothy, they don't want the dog. He doesn't want the dog to get hit, obviously. So he
Mhm.
pauses, and at that moment there were some lights. He could not see any turn signals because something was blocking his view. So he tells the dog to stay. He steps out into the street a little bit, and he looks up the street, and he sees the front end of a white Ford truck type vehicle. Those are his exact words. He's not able to commit to it being a Bronco or a pickup. He just knows it was some type of truck vehicle, and he remembers seeing the blue Ford logo on the grill, and he didn't think a whole lot of it, and he starts to walk across the street. Now, when they cross the street, the dog usually goes over to some palm trees. Those are the same palm trees that if you look at some of that crime scene footage, you see the yellow tape wrapped around the palm trees. Well, the dog runs over to one of those palm trees because he's going to take a leak, and he notices right away that kind of behind the palm tree, there's a blonde woman in dark clothing, and she's standing inside an open passenger door of this white truck vehicle, this white Ford truck type vehicle. And he realizes the dog's going to pee kind of by her feet, so he calls the dog, and then they head down Dorothy towards Gretna Green. They turn left. They always cross the street because the only sidewalk on Dorothy is on Nicole's side of the street, not on the opposite side of the street. So they always cross the street so they can get over to the sidewalk. It's still like that to this day. There's only one sidewalk on Dorothy, and it's on the north side of Dorothy. So as he turns, he takes one last look up Bundy, and he sees a young white or Hispanic male standing in the middle of the sidewalk, and he looks angry. He says that the man's got his fist clenched, and he's wearing dark clothing, and this had to be about 10:03 p.m., he says. He figures the young man is upset because he's walking his dog without a leash. And he continues on, and he goes home, and he doesn't really think a whole lot about it until obviously the news begins to spread about what happens. Literally, if you ask Marcia Clark, that would be 12 minutes before the murders take place, if you're buying what Marcia Clark was selling to the jury during the criminal trial.
There was a big timeline that I feel like the prosecution side with Marcia Clark, she really pushed that timeline. Do you feel that that's why he was never called as a witness, because it didn't fit the prosecution's time of events?
Yes, absolutely. I tried to reach out to her. I wasn't able to get a hold of her. Absolutely. There's no way, at least in my opinion, for a couple of years, I was really on the mindset there's no way that that young man could have been Ron Goldman. So that really is a problem for Marcia. There's no way that
Uh-huh.
he could have left the restaurant at about 9:55, walk all the way to his apartment, presumably shower, change, get in the car and drive over there by 10:03 in 8 minutes. There's no way. It's 5-minute walk just to get to his apartment. So in my
Uh-huh.
mind there was no way that that could have been Ron Goldman. Yeah, but
Uh,
until I started to think about it a little bit further.
mhm. I don't feel that, in this case, a lot of people, and, we've really focused on the family of Ron Goldman, because I feel like their family really got pushed aside in regards to the criminal case and the civil case. It was always obviously OJ and Nicole, but Ron Goldman, there were a lot of people, and you had communication with somebody that knew him, that got him the job, that worked closely with him. We don't hear a lot of that side of the story either. Who was that individual you spoke with?
So I didn't, well, I did speak to one of his friends, which is really interesting that she is her grandfather's uncle used to be the principal at this very school that I'm at right now, which was one of the many bizarre coincidences that I had. But the one that really stands out was a young man named Michael Nigg, and he helped Ron get the job there. He quit Mezzaluna a little like about a month or two before the murders took place, but he knew Ron Goldman. He actually dated his sister for a little while. Um, and on September 8th, 1995, right as the criminal trial was reaching its closing arguments, this young man was on a date with his girlfriend. They were going to the famous El Coyote restaurant in Hollywood. He had already got another job at a really famous club called the Sanctuary. That's where Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee got their start over there. But he pulls into a parking lot across the street from the restaurant and he is shot. He's murdered. They during a robbery, two young black males approach and they want money and he refuses. There's a scuffle and then there's a gunshot. And there were witnesses there were some arrests made, but they were released due to lack of evidence. And to this day, the case is unsolved. And unfortunately, to this day, that case is tied to the OJ case because there are conspiracy theorists out there who believe those two cases have to be connected, and they're just not. They're not connected. And I wouldn't have a problem saying it if they were, but they're just not. And it's unfortunate because of this conspiracy theory that continues to fester, the family of Michael Nigg, they they don't want to have nothing to do with anybody. They want to remain private, and that's kind of sad.
That's terrible for the family to not have answers, but still be tied to something where, I mean, I can see the family side. They want to be private, but they also deserve justice and answers for their family member.
And there's a
For
lot of
sure.
people out there saying, Ron was a drug dealer, and so this guy must have been a drug dealer. They have no basis for saying something like that, but you get on the internet, you get on social media, and you just start regurgitating these things that have nothing to do with the truth, and that's what's really unfortunate. Yeah.
So, what conspiracy theories that you may have uncovered and kind of debunked? What other conspiracy theories are out there that you've kind of found in your research?
I don't know if I've really debunked any conspiracy theories. I think what's this Tom Lang thing is really important because this is just a story that really makes you question everything that you've heard. A lot of things that a lot of people don't understand or don't realize, that you have Marcia Clark saying that the time of the murders took place at 10:15. You have the another attorney from the civil trial saying that the murders took place at 10:40. That is a huge difference in time, especially when you're talking about a a case that's in such a tight window, and to have such a
Hmm.
difference in time on that, I think that in itself is the reason why there is so much intrigue, because there's a lack of clarity on how it happened, why it happened, and what interests me most is when it happened. And
Uh-huh.
if you put in that Tom Lang testimony in that mix, it really even adds more uncertainty as to what happened, because now I'm putting another person, or not me, Tom Lang is putting another person at the scene 12 minutes before the murders took place. And to me, that's crazy. And it's crazy that his testimony, his witness account, has never really gotten out there in the media before. I think it's
Hmm.
mind boggling to me. I just got a message from a guy who's an OJ expert, and he's been doing all kinds of podcasts, and he's written books and stuff. And he didn't even know anything about Tom Lang, which was bizarre to me. But
How long did it take you in your deep dive to find his information? Because it seems like that just doesn't fit the narrative. Did it take you a while to find his witness information?
I read a lot of books. the book that actually have it right here, but I picked up this book. This is F. Lee Bailey's book. It was written right before he died, and he mentions Tom Lang in here several times, and he describes him as the most compelling witness of the case because he may have caught a glimpse of the killer or killers that night, and then he also says it was Tom Lang was the only reason he ever got into an argument with Johnny Cochran during the entire case. That Tom Lang was the only reason. If you watch some of the video transcripts of the trial, he's mentioned during Johnny Cochran's opening statement. He's mentioned when F. Lee Bailey makes a motion to have Tom Lang's witness statement turned over as discovery. He wins that. That's on television. Chris Darden mentions his name again during the closing argument, and yet still he's just not. His name is just not out there, and it's bizarre to me because I think what he sees is super important. But
Mm-hmm.
I got to a point where I realized I have to talk to Tom. I don't want to take F. Lee Bailey's word for it. I don't want to just rely on court transcripts and whatnot. I did get a hold of Pat McKenna. Are you familiar with Pat McKenna? He is
Mm-hmm.
a pretty famous private investigator. I found him and I asked for an interview, and I told him I just want to talk about Tom Lang, and he said absolutely. Not only did he give me the interview, he sent me all kinds of things, including the actual handwritten witness statement that Tom Lang delivers by courier to Marcia Clark's office 36 hours after the murders, and nobody from her office ever called him. And to this day, I really believe if they would have went through the trouble to contact him, I think this case would have turned out differently.
How do you think it would have turned out?
I think it would have led to a guilty verdict for sure, because that for the very reason Johnny Cochran didn't want to put him on the stand. Why? Because he sees a white truck parked right in front of her house. And you have an eyewitness putting potentially OJ's vehicle right in front of her condo 12 minutes before she says the murders took place. If you were Marcia Clark, wouldn't you want to put him on the stand? But they never called him, and he's upset by that.
That's wild. If that doesn't give you goosebumps when you're listening to this, like we think we all have it figured out, but there's always pieces of the puzzle that are left out. So I think it's so you don't see the full picture. It always
Yeah.
happens. I think you're asked all the time, obviously, writing about a case that was so public. Everyone, I'm sure, asks you this question. And I know I've seen your response on social media, but everybody asks, do you think with the information that they had, do you think that the verdict was correct in
I do.
1995?
I do think the verdict is correct. And I think there was, at that time, there was plenty of reasonable doubt for a juror to say, yeah, I'm not, there's too many uncertainties. For one, I can't, I have a hard time with the time. And if she can't tell me the time and she's basing it off a dog barking,
Mm-hmm.
that's not enough for me. And then you have, I could go on, but then you have Mark Furman, who can't answer the basic question of, did you plant evidence in the case? He does just say no. That's all you have to say. But he couldn't even
Mm-hmm.
answer that question. That to me is enough to give me reasonable doubt.
When we're looking now, I mean, there's been a lot of conspiracy theories, but there's been a lot of people now with the passing of OJ Simpson. So many people feel like there's a lot of areas that we're never going to get the answers. Do you still find that there's a lot more to be investigated and things that should probably come to the center of attention?
Yeah, there. In fact, I'm going to be appearing in a documentary here in a couple weeks. They're working on one now, but they're really exploring the possibility that OJ wasn't alone that night, and I think they're asking me to come because of Tom Lang and what Tom Lang sees. I don't necessarily agree with what they're saying, but it definitely raises the question, well, who is that guy? And
Mm-hmm.
like I was saying before, for a long time, I didn't think it could be Ron Goldman. But then if you read my book, I do offer a theory as to, I do think it was Ron Goldman. And I think he probably went there twice that night.
Hmm.
I think Ron This is basically my. I'll just give it to you. This is my theory is this is that he got the call from Nicole about his mother's glasses, about her mother's glasses, and he said, "I'm almost off. I'll bring them over. I'll be there at 10 o'clock." Now, if you look at the map of where his apartment is, where her condo is, and where the restaurant is, the restaurant's kind of in the middle of the two of them. He could have
Mhm.
he could have walked over to Nicole's, it's not that far, and handed the glasses over, but then he would have to double back and walk all the way back home to start getting ready. What I think he did was I think that he went over there, and instead of going to Nicole's, he walked home, and instead of going upstairs and showering and stuff like Marcia says he did, what I think he did is I think he got in the car before he went upstairs, knew he could drive over and make a quick drive back, knowing that he had to be there around 10. I don't think that they had any plans of doing anything extracurricular. She had a long day. It was a long emotional day. Her
Mhm.
kids are upstairs. I just don't see that happening. But what I think happened is if you take a time of 9:55, and I've timed it. I've done the walks and I've done the drive. It's a 5-minute walk from the Mezzaluna restaurant to his apartment. It's a 3-minute drive from his apartment to her condo. That's 8 minutes total. If he leaves right at 9:55 or maybe a little bit before that, that's going to put him right there on that sidewalk at 10:03. Well, if you're buying what Tom Lang is selling, and I think he was a very credible person, he sees that white truck. So I'm thinking maybe she was arguing with OJ at that time and he showed up at the wrong time, and maybe she motions him away, kind of tells him to come back in a little bit, or he tells her I'll be back. Then he turns around and goes back to the apartment. And I think it's very possible that his first arrival there is kind of what triggers everything. Maybe OJ notices him pull up behind him. And, and those are the lights that Tom Lang sees coming down the street. Maybe that's what happens. But
Mhm.
I think that's very possible that Ron Goldman got there twice. I think that Daniel Petroselli is probably right about his 10. He uses Robert Heidstra's witness account of 10:40 and hearing a young man yell, "Hey, hey, hey," and the gate slamming that happened around 10:40. Um, the other witness hears things happening around 10:15 with the dog. I think she gets killed at 10:15 while he's in the shower back at home. I think he shows up at 10:40. He still is still trying to figure out what's going on, and that's when the second murder takes place. That's my theory. I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory. It's just my hypothesis on how things might have went down that night.
I think the timeline is strange. I think that's always been something that everyone's been so centered and focused on. Because again, they only use the dog barking. That was kind of just like the hub of their case. And then you also hear the limo driver, the time he got there, and then he saw, the Bronco and he saw OJ at the house. When you're looking at the map, which I love that you brought up, everything in that vicinity is pretty compact. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like the opposite side of town.
Yep.
So when you're hearing Tom Lang's, call of events as a witness and the time, that lines up
Yep.
very like plain puzzle piece to me.
Yeah, you can Google map it. It says it's the same thing. Yeah, I did the same. I did the walk from Tom Lang's house to the corner. It is 3 minutes. It's a 3-minute walk. It puts him right there at 10:03. Yeah.
Hmm.
And and he's to me he's very credible. He didn't look for me. I tracked him down. I found him living in Tehachapi, which is the very place that he was going to look for property. He did buy the property and he's still there to this day. Now he's probably about 72 years old. I haven't talked to him since I interviewed him, but
Mhm.
he hasn't tried to sign a book deal. He hasn't tried to make money on it. He wasn't looking for anybody. I tracked him down and he agreed to do his first interview, which I think it's important, that.
Mhm.
But he was pretty upset that nobody called him because he does believe as he looks back, he does believe that he saw OJ. He thinks that was OJ, and he saw Nicole, and he thinks that young man on the sidewalk was Ron Goldman. Now, there are some other people that I'm talking to, and they make a very interesting argument on the possibility that it was somebody else besides Ron Goldman, but I'm not the expert on that. You'll have to talk to those guys.
Do you think that that could be a possibility, or are you still like, I'm kind of like so on that?
I'm open to it. I'm kind of sticking to my theory, but I am open to it. You look at OJ, and I think about the Vegas thing, and I all he had to do, all he was trying to do supposedly was go and get his stuff back, his memorabilia back, right? And to me, that's something you could do by yourself
Uh-huh.
or bring a friend. Man, he had a whole posse of people that were with him, some of them carrying weapons. So you could just go ask for your memorabilia back. Is it really out of the realm of possibility to say, hey, maybe OJ didn't go there by himself? And I'm not saying somebody else did the killing, but this was somebody else driving the vehicle? Did somebody else help him get rid of the evidence afterward? Yeah, I think it's a possibility for sure.
Mhm. I think they really focused also on, obviously, with documentaries and, the criminal case and the civil case and all of these things that have come up, many, many years later. I think it's something too, they always focused on Nicole. They focused on, bad mouthing her and, oh, maybe she was
Mhm.
doing drugs or, and they really put that narrative really fixated on, Ron Goldman and her, this love affair. And I think it's interesting that you stated, because I don't think people really sit and reflect. Like, they state like that was not the situation, and her kids were in the house upstairs. So I think that that was something that they really pushed that, and it's like, when you look at the timeline and you look at kind of like, how they were connected and even other people that, worked with Ron Goldman, I just don't think that that's really something that ever should have been focused on. But I think that that took a hold of that narrative because it was drama that kind of took the focus off of the timelines that just didn't fit.
And to be honest, to be brutally honest, that kind of stuff is what lured me in because that
Mm.
documentary was about the possibility of somebody else committing the murders. So that time I'm not trying to write a book. I'm in my room and I'm just kind of like, well, I wonder if this button and the question that I had was the original question that brought me into all this was how did Ron get to her condo? And
Mhm.
in my memory bank, I could not remember anything, any reference to his method of transportation to get from his apartment to her condo. If he drove, wouldn't in my mind, I'm thinking, wouldn't the car be parked right out front? I mean, or around
Mhm.
the corner or in the driveway? Because he obviously didn't go anywhere afterward. He's been murdered. The car, to me, if he's only dropping off glasses, the car, the engine could have been running still. And so
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out where did the police search the vehicle? Is there a possibility that Ron was the target? Was there a possibility that he was under duress? All those things, those conspiracies were getting to me. And so after a while, though, I started to calm down and started to kind of look at things more openly, I guess. Yeah.
Mhm. So the book title is OJ's Moon: Untold Stories from the Other Side. How did you come up with that title? Where did it come from?
Well, I think the Mezzaluna, I learned this from Daniel Petrocelli during the civil trial transcripts that I read. He points out that Mezzaluna means crescent moon in Italian. So I thought that would be kind of the perfect metaphor. You have a lot of things that everybody seems to focus on the bright side of the moon, the gloves, Furman, DNA, the domestic violence stuff, the 911 calls, but there's these other stories that are on the dark side, on the other side that nobody's seen before. Tom Lang, Michael Nigg. There's another story that's in the book as well. So those are the ones that I tried to focus on. So it's just kind of a metaphorical thing. I kind of
Mhm.
liked it, so I went with it.
I like it. So many people, and we already talked about it, you feel that the criminal trial in 95, that the jury and the verdict, they got it right. So, do you feel that OJ did have something to do with it? Or do you think he was just, I mean, so many people think maybe he was set up. Do you think that he was the person that was there that did the killings?
I do. I do think that he is responsible, but I am open to the possibility that he was not alone. I'm sorry, I just am. So
Uh-huh.
there's a small part of me that leaves that door open, and I'm anxious to talk to some of these people that I'm going to be seeing in a couple weeks to see what they have to say for sure.
I'm excited to hear about that, and you'll have to let us know when that documentary airs so we can check that out as well.
Yeah, it's going to be
So
called
many people.
Orenthal. Orenthal. Keep your eyes out for
Okay.
that one. Yeah.
I think a lot of people now realize like maybe he didn't do it alone. There's been a lot of chatter of maybe Ace was there. A lot of people have even assumed that maybe OJ's son was there because there, when you kind of look at that, there's a very weird connection. But I think it's interesting because it just amazes me that there was a witness, and we never knew this in the general public, that he sent his statement by courier to Marsha Clark's office. Nothing was ever done. When you're looking at a criminal case, especially at this magnitude, if your mouth does not drop to the floor when you're listening to this part of this episode and thinking, oh, would that happen in the real world? Absolutely. No, it would not.
Mm-hmm. And what the other thing too that bothers me about the possibility of another person being there is, Marcia Clark, 8 days after the murders, went out and told the press he is the only one being charged because he is the sole murderer. 8 days, 8 days
Uh-huh.
after the murder, you've done really no real investigation, thorough investigation, and you've already decided, you've already made up your mind he was alone. That's a pretty quick rush to judgment, at least in my opinion.
I agree. I think it cancels out all other options because it just also, when you state that to the media, especially social media now versus, media then was so different. We lived and like breathed everything that we saw on TV.
Yeah.
And you didn't have other people's comments or other people's opinions that really factored into that. So I think that she kind of created her own narrative, and I think she buried it because there was no room for other opportunities or other insights to come through. And I think that's very apparent, obviously, with Tom Lang never ever being called to the witness stand.
And if whoever gets the book, I reprinted the written statement. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can look at exactly what he wrote. It has the date, it has the time. It's 36 hours after the murders took place. What was really interesting was he had a really rough day of work that next morning, and he went in early, and his house, the car entrance is through the back in the alley. It's the same alley that runs across Dorothy behind Nicole's condo. In fact, he used to tell me, he said he used to see her drive down that alley really fast and then head out like towards Wilshire or whatever. But um,
Uh-huh.
it's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
wild for sure.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, sharing all of your insight. I think this might trigger a few people to maybe follow your gut instinct if you're interested in something. You never know what you're going to uncover and find. You guys know I'm going to put all the information in the bio description. There's also a Facebook page in regards to your book. So I highly suggest you guys go give that a follow. And yeah, let us know when the documentary comes out, because we would love to watch. And I don't think this is going to be a case that we ever let lie. Like I said, everybody is intrigued in some way, shape, or form. Even when we think we have all the answers, we just this gut instinct that we're connected because we watched it. I mean, it was technically one of the first criminal cases you ever saw on TV in that
Yep.
magnitude. So I think it's something that we're all interested in. Guess what? We're all nosy. I mean, it's, 95 to 2025. We're all still curious and nosy about this case.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. My wife really likes your podcast too. She
Thank
wanted
you.
she
Thank
wanted
you.
to say hi to you.
Oh, awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys stopping by, and yeah, keep us in the loop. I'll definitely be announcing on the Little Bit of Life podcast Facebook when that documentary airs. And like I said, go order the book. I'm rushing to order it because I want to see all the information. I love that you put that in there so we can visually see it
Yep.
versus just taking your word.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Little Bit of Life podcast. Don't forget to leave your feedback over on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Until then, take care and keep showing up for yourself.